The United Nations General Assembly opened the first of 2 days of debate on the draft resolution to end the United States economic, commercial, and financial blockade against Cuba. In Ecuador, President Guillermo Lasso decreed a state of emergency following deadly attacks in Guayaquil and Esmeraldas in the context of the prison violence crisis. And in Belize, the Prime Minister declared a state of emergency due to the proximity of Hurricane Lisa to the nation's coast. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The United Nations General Assembly started a 2-day debate on the draft resolution to end the United States economic, commercial, and financial blockade against Cuba as part of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly, which takes place between November 2nd and the 3rd. Representatives of different countries will take a stand on the project that seeks to put an end to the blockade imposed by Washington against the Caribbean island. The proposal has been submitted annually since 1992 and has been approved by almost every nation. According to the report titled Necessity to Put an End to the Economic, Commercial, and Financial Blockade Imposed by the United States of America against Cuba, this policy causes damages of more than $400 million a month and at least $15 million a day.
It is a criminal blockade because it generates death, pain, and indiscriminate suffering of an entire people. It is a blockade that it's inhumane because it deliberately and systematically violates the human rights of more than 11 million Cubans, and that today represents the main obstacle to the achievement of their inalienable rights to development. It is a blockade that constitutes a collective punishment and whose permanent effect are clear crimes against humanity. It is a blockade which is a part of an economic aggression within the framework of policy of maximum pressure and which, as is well known and widely documented, has a destructive and lethal impact similar to that produced by conventional wars.
In his speech, the Mexican ambassador to the United Nations, Juan Ramón de la Fuente, ratified his country's condemnation of the economic and financial blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba.
Mexico condemns in the strongest terms the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed on Cuba for almost 6 decades, as well as the decision to implement the third title of the Law of Cuban Freedom and Democratic Solidarity, the so-called Helms-Burton Law, which has affected not only the sovereignty of Cuban people, but also the rights of third countries.
The ambassador of Bolivia to the UN, Diego Barry Rodriguez, in his speech stressed that Bolivia recognizes Cuba as a people of solidarity and reiterated its rejection of the unilateral measures imposed by the United States against the Caribbean island.
Bolivia recognizes in Cuba a people in solidarity with the causes of the peoples, a people of peace and respectful of international law. Therefore, once again, we join the international community in condemning and rejecting in the strongest possible terms the unilateral, immoral, and criminal economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed for more than half a century by the United States of America against the sister republic of Cuba.
Likewise, the ambassador of Azerbaijan and representative of the non-aligned countries movement, Yasar Aliyev, stressed his rejection of the economic and financial siege against the island.
The non-aligned movement reiterates once again its firm opposition to the enactment and imposition of coercive and unilateral measures that are not authorized by the relevant United Nations bodies and that are incompatible with the principles of international law or the United Nations Charter, given its extraterritorial implications and its illegal character. The non-aligned movement has repeatedly stressed that it calls on the United States government to put an end to the economic, commercial, and financial embargo that it has illegally maintained against Cuba for 6 decades now.
Jamaica's broadcasting regulator banned music and TV broadcasting to glorify or promote criminal activity, violence, drug use, scamming, and weapons. The government said the ban is meant to cut back on material that could give the wrong impression that criminality is an accepted feature of Jamaican culture and society. Some artists have criticized the measure, saying it cuts populations affected by hate and gun violence out of the conversation and that it will do little to stop crime. As Jamaican rap continues to be played in parties and bars, some older generation of musicians support the ban. The latest have stated that the lyrics to some of the music has strong influence in the way people think and behave. The ban came after years of struggle by the Caribbean nation to hold high levels of gun violence, which caused Jamaica to have the highest murder rate in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2021. In Brazil, demonstrations continue in several cities after incumbent Jair Bolsonaro expressed his support for the protests. The demonstrations that followed Lula da Silva's electoral victory continued on Wednesday, but they are losing strength. Of the initial 500 roadblocks in 24 of the 27 states of the country, only 167 remain in place after police negotiated with demonstrators to completely free the traffic. Also, the movement demanding a military coup started to lose intensity after President Bolsonaro finally admitted his defeat by announcing the start of the government transition process with Lula's team. In the United States, less than a week before the midterm elections, polls predict close results in both houses of Congress. On November 8th, the midterm elections will be held in the United States to renew one-third of the Senate, the entire House of Representatives, and several governorships. According to projections in the Senate, out of the 35 seats up for election, Republicans might win 20 and Democrats are expected to win 12 seats. There are 3 seats for which there's still uncertainty. In the House of Representatives, the Republicans lead voting intentions to win 212 seats, while the Democrats could win 205. These elections are marked by the highest inflation in 40 years, a poor economic recovery after the pandemic, and high political polarization. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. At least 13 attacks by drug gangs left 5 police officers dead and 2 others wounded in Ecuador, leading to the declaration of a state of emergency in the provinces hardest hit by drug-related crime. The measure adopted by President Guillermo Lasso came into effect on Tuesday night and will be in effect for 45 days. The law implies a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. and allows the president to use the armed forces to restore order. On Tuesday, drug trafficking organizations attacked police facilities and gas stations with explosives and gunfire in response to the transfer of prisoners from Guayas 1 prison in Guayaquil, in the southwestern part of the country. That prison has been one of the main scenes of repeated massacres among inmates that have left some 400 dead since February 2021. In this context of violence, the national government suspended the military parade planned for Wednesday as part of the commemorative acts for the 202nd anniversary of independence of Cuenca. The armed forces indicate that they are suspending the event due to the serious violence generated by criminal gangs and the declaration of a state of emergency in several provinces, and in coherence with the efforts made by the institutions in charge of national defense and security. The Prime Minister of Belize, John Briceño, decreed Wednesday a state of emergency for the districts threatened by the direct impact of Hurricane Lisa, which is approaching the coast of the Central American country. The Emergency Management Organization estimated that the curfew would expire at dawn on Thursday, judging by the speed at which Lisa is moving with maximum sustained winds of 82 miles per hour, and added that institutional emergency and security teams will be on standby to respond to possible calls. Heavy rains associated with the system are already battering Belize and are expected to cause flooding in the southern territories, although shelters are still available throughout the country. The Russian Federation renews its participation in the agreement on the export of Ukrainian grain after paralyzing activity due to the recent Kiev attacks on ports. According to Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov, the government of Ukraine gave the necessary written guarantees not to use the Black Sea grain corridor for military actions against Moscow. For his part, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, stated on Wednesday that the agreement on the restoration of the humanitarian corridor was reached after negotiations with the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Konashenkov also added that thanks to UN participation and the assistance of Ankara, it was possible to receive Kiev's assurances, which are sufficient to resume the agreement.
Thanks to the participation of the UN as well as the assistance from Turkey, it was possible to obtain the necessary written guarantees from Ukraine not to use the humanitarian corridor and Ukrainian port designed for the export of agricultural products for hostilities against the Russian Federation.
The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that there is no doubt over Britain's involvement in Ukrainian drone attacks on the Black Sea Fleet and in September explosions on the Nord Stream gas pipelines.
Of course, there is no doubt that the British intelligence services are involved in the terrorist attack on the Black Sea Fleet base in Sevastopol on October 29 and the sabotage of the Nord Stream. They will not be left without a reaction. We spoke about this at the UN Security Council. We spoke about it publicly. And, of course, as I said, the UK ambassador will be summoned and will be given the appropriate materials. And I promise you that these same materials, more or less, but those basic materials that will be handed over as evidence to the British side and will also be made known to the general public.
Flags of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions have been installed in the Russian Federation Council on Wednesday. The Federation Council's TV channel showed the flag-setting ceremony with Speaker of the Federation Council, Valentina Matvienko. The installation of flags came ahead of Russia's National Unity Day on November 4th. The incorporation of the regions occurred after the completion of the referendums that took place in each of the regions. The Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic have been supported by Moscow since declaring independence in 2014. The southern Kherson region and part of neighboring Zaporizhia have been guarded by Russian military since the start of the special military operation in Ukraine, which began in February.
Necessary laws on amendments to the Constitution, and now the Donetsk, Luhansk republics, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions are the full-fledged subjects of the Russian Federation. We now have 89 regions. Traditionally, their flags will take their rightful place in the gallery of flags at the Chamber of Regions.
We have more news coming up after a fire short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. The Ethiopian government and Tigrayan forces agreed on a permanent cessation of hostilities to end the war in northern Tigrayan region. The announcement was made by African Union Chief Mediator Olusegun Obasanjo following talks between the two sides in South Africa. Obasanjo confirmed that both sides agreed on restoration services and of law and order as well as on unhindered access to humanitarian supplies. Eritrea, which fought alongside neighboring Ethiopia, was not part of the peace talks. Between 385,000 and 600,000 civilians are estimated to have died in Tigray because of fighting, famine and lack of health care. A 5-month truce collapsed in August and government forces took control of key cities and towns after Tigrayan forces.
The two parties in the Ethiopian conflict have formally agreed to the cessation of hostilities as well as to systematic, orderly, smooth, and coordinated disarmament, restoration of law and order, restoration of services, unhindered access to humanitarian supplies, protection of civilians, especially women, children, and other vulnerable groups, among other areas of agreement. Today is the beginning of a new dawn for Ethiopia, for the Horn of Africa, and indeed for Africa as a whole. Let me hasten to thank God for this new dawn. We have seen in practice and actualization what we have tried to achieve for ourselves over the years, and that is African solution for African problems.
In the framework of the Arab League Summit, the President of Algeria, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, called on member countries to face growing tensions, regional crisis, and renew support for the Palestinian cause. The head of state expressed his willingness to present a request to the United Nations to convene an extraordinary General Assembly in order to grant the Palestinian state full membership in the international organization. At the 21st Summit of the Arab League, the Algerian executive said he hoped that a solid economic bloc could be built to protect common interests in such a way that it would have an impact on the development of the peoples. Finally, Tebboune said that the region is facing complex crises with multiple challenges and risks following the impact of COVID-19. Kenya's President William Ruto announced Nairobi will be deploying troops to the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for a joint regional operation against a rebel offensive. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is struggling to contain dozens of armed groups whose recent advances in the country's east have revived old animosities and led to a surge in tensions with neighboring Rwanda. Leaders of the seven-nation East African Community Bloc, in which Kenya is a regional leader, agreed in April to establish a joint force to help restore security in the DRC. Speaking at a ceremony in Nairobi to announce the deployment, President Ruto said they were on a mission to protect humanity.
We are sending a signal to the world of our commitment to perform our obligations by contributing to the achievement and maintenance of peace and stability in our region. This state of insecurity is of tremendous concern to humanity and to our region. In light of the invitation by the DRC, the deployment of a regional force in pursuit of peace and the activation of the East African Community regional force to forestall conflict is therefore legitimate, urgent, and necessary.
Search operations continue on Wednesday for the fourth consecutive day after the collapse of a bridge in India that has so far left 135 people dead and dozens injured. Right after the accident, authorities launched an investigation into the cause of the failure of the structure. At the moment, 9 people have been arrested in connection with the collapse of the pedestrian bridge, all of them associated with the maintenance company in charge of the bridge. They are being investigated for culpable homicide not amounting to murder. Dozens of boats, divers and armed forces units, as well as several brigades of the National Disaster Response Force, continue to search for possible survivors after the bridge collapsed on Sunday. We have come to the end of this news program. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You will also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.